I do think that when you're actually writing down notes, you remember stuff better. So my best practice is to have the AI bot going. It's capturing everything just so nothing falls through the cracks, as we just said. But then also have my notebook open, right? And say, okay, I don't have to scribble down everything now, which is nice. But if there's something big, like the client says, almost it's that like one or two moments in the call where it's like, hey, this is the thing that the entire deal is going to hinge around. Maybe it's some weird debt. Maybe it's, some, I don't know, income or other property, or I don't know what else, that they might have. I write that down too, because, okay, if I remember nothing else in this meeting, this is the important thing to remember. I'm going to write that down. That's going to get ingrained in my memory. And then maybe more, smaller things can just get captured by these AI bots. So it does allow you to get a little bit more involved in the meeting, so you're not constantly scribbling things down. But yeah, just word of caution to understand that there's that double-edged sword of capturing what's really important. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Mortgage Tech Talks. I am your host, Tom. Today, we're going to be talking about probably one of the most applicable AI use cases I have seen. We use it ourselves at Blue Root as an organization, and it makes a real impact I see on a day-to-day and drives efficiency. It's not some, harebrained idea that, hey, maybe one day it could do something. It's delivering results today. And what that is are these AI note-taker tools. Maybe you've seen them. They're the things that join your meetings and they'll take transcripts for you. And we'll get into all that in the episode. So if you are interested in these types of tools or just simply using AI to enhance your business, this is the episode for you. We'll see you on the other side. Okay, let's get right into it here. So yeah, today we're talking about these AI note-taker bots. So for anybody who's not super familiar with these tools, I'll give you the brief overview of exactly what they do, and then we'll get into different things like, hey, why would you use them, and what are your different options? So what are these tools? So basically what it is, you can think of it almost like an assistant, a note-taking assistant that works with you, but it's all AI powered. And so the idea is you have this AI agent almost that now works for you, is on your team. And what this AI agent will do is it'll look at your calendar and it'll find all the upcoming meetings, right? And it'll see those times when you have these meetings. And so, yes, it would have to be Zoom or Google Meets or Microsoft Teams. It's at least not there yet in terms of live meetings. I'll get to that in a second. But it does mainly thrive on these online meetings that obviously have taken off since COVID. And so this AI agent will find all your Zoom, all your Google Meets, all these different meetings that you might have on your calendar. And then when you join, they'll actually join too. So now when you join them, you've probably seen this, some of these kind of like, they look like black boxes and they might have a little logo on them and not sure what they are. Well, those are probably these AI agents. So maybe someone on the call that you're with is using one of these AI agents. And so this person, or I should say AI agent, bit of a slip there, will actually join your meeting with you. And then really it's pretty straightforward. It's just a note taker. So it's going to sit there and it's going to take notes and it's going to keep track of everything that was ever said. So that's the high level of it. But let's just get into a little bit more specific. So what do you get in the end, right? So you have this note taker, they're taking notes, they're scribbling things down. What can you get? Well, first and foremost, you get a full transcript, right? So if that is something that's interesting to you, we can get into some use cases why that might be interesting. But in any case, you get that full transcript, a full set of notes that are taken. Some people just take that and throw it on a blog, if it's a more of an internal call, a promotional call, maybe a webinar, and they have it now a transcript. They can put that into a blog. That's interesting. But you have that full transcript. Okay, that's great. But what I really like, and really where this thing and where the AI piece of it comes in, is that it then will summarize the meeting. So it'll be able to say, okay, this is the full transcript. Fine. These are all the words that were said. But what really happened in the meeting? And again, this is how it's almost like a person in that sense, where you can go to them and say, hey, you sat in on this meeting. What happened? What's going on? What should I know? What are the takeaways? And it'll be able to provide that summary. So maybe it's an hour call and it's able to then condense it down into, just a few paragraphs and say, it's kind of always talked about. These are the things you said. This is the thing that the other person said. Here are the takeaways, whatever. So it can really kind of condense that down and provide a very interesting summary. And what I like about a lot of these tools, and most of them have this feature, is that you can actually define the framework in which you want to receive that summary. So what do I mean by that? Well, I think by default, most of these have just like almost like chapters, right? So it's like, hey, first you talked about the weather. and blah blah blah, this is about the weather. And then you talked about rate. Okay, rate, why rate is good, right? Rate is bad. Where are rates today? Then you talked about actually some non-tangibles about a particular mortgage product, like penalties and things like that. Okay, that's a difference. So it kind of just goes chronological. But what you can do, which is really interesting, is you can actually say, hey, I don't really care so much about chronological, at least for me, and the way I think about the way I do my calls is I always want to know, like, I'll just do a simple example. The one that comes to mind is that there's like this sales framework called BANT, which is like budget, authority, needs, and I don't know what the T is. So it doesn't matter. So T is timeline. T is timeline. So it's a very well-known framework in the sales world to say, hey, when you do a sales call, which I think a lot of times a discovery call can be perceived as a sales call, follow this framework, right? Because if you know who has the budget, what's the budget, who has the authority, right? Is the husband, the wife, what are the needs of that particular person, and what are the timelines, you can make very good decisions, or that'll really help your sales process and understand the next steps. And so you can go to this AI agent and say, hey, whoa, I don't want the chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, what we talked about. I kind of remember that. Actually, what I'm more interested from you as an AI agent is to put it in this context. What was this person's budget again? Who has the authority based on the conversation? Who do you think has the authority to make these decisions? So not only will it summarize, make it much easier to read, but actually can deliver that information in a very impactful way that makes the most sense for you. So I think that's super, super cool. The last thing that you're able to kind of get out of it in terms of just like takeaways from a specific meeting, and then there's kind of some cool other periphery features, which we'll talk about. But one other thing that just comes on a meeting by meeting basis, most of these tools, again, will actually give you takeaways. So it's not just, hey, here's a summary, but it's like, hey, Tom, you said to the client that you're going to follow up on the latest rate today, right? Hey, you whatever there was, you're getting a new rate sheet, maybe today or tomorrow, or whatever it might be, where I'm going to follow up and give you the latest rate so it's fully up to date. If you committed to that on the phone, these AI bots can actually then pull that out and then almost make it like a checklist for you. So next time you log into the tool, it'll say, hey, last time on your call, you said you were going to do this. Have you done it yet? So again, it's not just the summary, it's about these next actions. And some of them too will actually create those next actions for whoever else was on the call, right? So, hey, Tom, you're on the call with your client. Your client said they're going to get you, their T4s. Have you gotten it yet? Have they done that? So even that is a little bit of a reminder. So not only do you get the transcript, not only get the AI summary in the way that you want, but also the system will then say, hey, these are the things you said you do. Have you done them? So it's a very, very powerful thing. It allows really a lot of efficiency. So you're not constantly writing notes necessarily, but more than anything, it makes sure nothing falls through the cracks. So that's really what you get out of it. And some of the periphery features, some other things that, these tools will deliver is a lot of them do have then on their own site a little bit of an AI bot, right? Where it's like you can almost talk to it and be like, hey, Mr. AI bot, I know we spoke to Tanya. I'm just using the name Tanya last week. What did we talk about again? And so you can start even having like a little conversation with it. It's not just these outputs of specific paragraphs. You can actually have a dynamic conversation, which is kind of cool. It's a little bit of a bell and a whistle, but I think that's cool. And then the other one that a lot of these guys do is they allow you to do snippets, right? So to say, hey, maybe I had a moment on my call that I thought was really, really good. And I want maybe my assistant who I'm training to see it. And actually, there's been a couple calls where there's been a couple little snippets that are really good. You can go in and grab those snippets and make a little playlist, right? So say, hey, for you, my real assistant now, who is about to take on some of these phone calls for me, follow this structure, right? This is what I did. And you can highlight these areas, these specific chunks in a particular call, and create a little playlist to say, hey, if you want to know how I talk about rate, let's say, here are 3 perfect examples of when I really nailed that rate conversation. And you can create these little playlists based on the snippets of these calls. So that's it just from like a pure feature perspective. There's of course lots more little things in there, like any of these platforms, but that's the super high level. So the question I always like to ask, and I've alluded to it a bit, let's get a little bit deeper on it, is, okay, so why is this useful? What can I do with it? So, I mean, yeah, at the highest level, of course, we talked about nothing falling through the cracks, and it allows you to focus maybe a little bit more on the meeting. So I think that's great. Make sure everything's captured. I do think it's a little bit of a double-edged sword. I will kind of put this asterisk beside it to say, I do think that when you're actually writing down notes, you remember stuff better. So my best practice is to have the AI bot going. It's capturing everything just so nothing falls through the cracks, as we just said. But then also have my notebook open, right? And say, okay, I don't have to scribble down everything now, which is nice. But if there's something big, like the client says, almost it's that like one or two moments in the call where it's like, hey, this is the thing that the entire deal is going to hinge around. Maybe it's some weird debt. Maybe it's, some, I don't know, income or other property, or I don't know what else, that they might have. I write that down too. Because, okay, if I remember nothing else in this meeting, this is the important thing to remember. I'm going to write that down. That's going to get ingrained in my memory. And then maybe more, smaller things can just get captured by these AI bots. So it does allow you to get a little bit more involved in the meeting. So you're not constantly scribbling things down. But yeah, just word of caution to understand that there's that double-edged sword of capturing what's really important. Obviously, the next thing too is just making sure that you follow through with your commitments, right? Nothing falls through the cracks. You're providing good service for your clients, for your partners. That goes without saying. Those takeaways, as I talked about, really allow that. So that's great. But where I really see these things really unlocking and really kind of going to the next level is when you start to integrate these into a bigger system. So for us, and obviously where we work and a lot of our clients, that bigger system is a CRM. So I'll give two examples of how this works. So the one huge unlock is when you can actually take these summaries, right? So these AI summaries of a couple paragraphs, what was this call about? And you can put it in as a note on your client's profile, right? And so you can load that up, have that in there. And so what that allows is that now, okay, let's say you have 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 calls with your client. Now you can just go to that client's page, and along with all the other details of all the emails you've sent them and all the deals you've done with them and whatever else might be there, you can have a transcript of everything you've ever spoken with them. So it's like, oh yeah, I spoke to Tom 2 weeks ago. What did we talk about? You can pull that up and you can see it right there. So that's really nice just on a person by person basis. But the huge unlock that we've seen is that we can start building that into reporting. And so, as a simple example, what we've done or we've seen people do is say, okay, now that I have all these transcripts of all these calls I've ever done, I want to know, how often does penalty come up? Right, as a concept in these discovery calls. And so you can use the reporting features that are very, very strong in these CRM systems or whatever other system you're using, and combine it with these note summaries or these call summaries and do a report and say, hey, in the past month, in all calls that were discovery calls or 3 months, whatever it might be, how many times was the word discovery mentioned? And then you can pull those people up. And then as a next step, you can also pull in the stage of where they're at in the deal. And you can say, hey, if I mention penalty, I actually close much better because people understand the value of a mortgage broker and how fixed versus variable, there's different penalties. And that nuance is what they get out of working with me, that expert advice. And if I don't mention penalty, I usually just lose because then it becomes a rate game and they just go to their bank. So you can start drawing those insights to say, hey, if I say certain things on a certain call, how is my performance from a sales perspective? Very, very cool. Very, very powerful. And then the second one I said today too, the second one is then to actually integrate. We talked about these takeaways as tasks in the CRM. And these are really kind of our power users, what we see. I mean, myself, I use tasks all the time in our CRM. It's my to-do list. It's to make sure how I make sure everything gets done. And it's the same idea to say, oh, instead of just having it, because it honestly, admittedly, it's a bit tough when they take out these takeaways, but now it's just sitting in some random tool that maybe you don't log into that often, being one of these tools. But if that can integrate right into your already daily workflow, this task list that you're staring at every day, if you can integrate it in, then it just becomes part of your day-to-day. And again, that becomes hugely, hugely powerful when you can embed these takeaways into the tools that you're already using to manage your tasks in your day-to-day. The last thing that I'll say in all of this, and I think this is a underrated piece of what these tools can do, is compliance. Right. And I think that we are, as an industry, continuing to get regulated to death, maybe a little bit without going down that rabbit hole. But obviously, we had the AML coming out last year. We have, these new continuing education credits. Just saw an article on that, how they're really starting to crack down on that. And just regulatory oversight is just going to increase. And I think that could lead to potentially, more audits, things like that. But if you can have a full transcript, something that is very easy just to hit, control print and send to a regulator or something like that, of what you said to a client at what time and what was the nature of the conversation, it's just going to be that much better for you and your business and your brokerage, right? Whoever you're part of, they're going to maybe mandate, who knows, these types of tools because they know, hey, if we have a full transcript, a full recording of all these conversations, we know we're covering our butts as it relates to any type of audit or any type of compliance thing. So it's kind of like a nice sales and marketing thing now. I think in the future, it could very well be a super powerful compliance, almost mandatory compliance tool. Okay, final thing here. So maybe you've been listening and you said, okay, you know what, Tom, you've convinced me. These things are cool. I love it. Let's get started. What should I use though, right? What's the platform? So I'll talk about 3 platforms. Fathom is very popular, Firefly, and then Otter. So those are the 3, probably the most popular ones. They're all kind of the same price. They're kind of like $20 to $30 a month. So, hopefully that's, within whoever's listening's budget. I think it's well worth it if you're doing enough phone calls. I guess that's the caveat there. And so when would you use each of these? So let me just share my screen. I'll quickly show just, each of the different platforms here just so you can see them and what they're all about. This is, again, for anybody who's just listening, I apologize. I'm just sharing my screen. And of course, you can see this on our YouTube if you do want to see it. So yeah, just sharing. This one's Fathom. #1 rated AI note taker, sure. I won't go through all this stuff up, but just to give you a sense of what they look like, kind of who these different platforms are. So there you go. Firefly, same idea. #1 AI note taker. Okay, so there's lots of #1s out there, right? They're all #1. And then finally, Otter, the #1 AI me. So yeah, they're all #1. That's hilarious to see on their website. They all claim to be #1. There's only one #1, but I guess in this case, there's 3. But so those are the 3 big ones. Like I said, they're all kind of $20 to $30 a month. Why should you use one over the other? Honestly, most of the features I talked about are kind of across all the platforms. I don't see a huge differentiation. But what I'll say is a couple for each. So Fathom, you should use this if you're using Zoom. If people are using Zoom, it is optimized for Zoom. I know on their website it supports other platforms, but it's really optimized for Zoom, and it has a desktop app, which is really cool. So we like it because it's more for impromptu meetings. Like I said at the beginning, the AI agent will look at your website and join the meetings where they see the meetings. But if you're just jumping on your Zoom randomly, maybe having a conversation with a colleague or whatever it might be, then the desktop agent is constantly monitoring. Like, oh, I see that you've just opened Zoom. Let me come in and join, right? So if you are having more impromptu meetings, the desktop app and Zoom can really help with Fathom. So that's what I would use. If you're using Fathom, you have a lot of impromptu meetings, Fathom makes a lot of sense. Firefly is really, really strong in integrations. So if you are using maybe a bit more of an obscure, I talked a lot about CRMs, but if you're using something a little bit more obscure, I don't know, like a Monday or something like that, or an Asana, they already have all those pre-baked integrations. So they're definitely the strongest as it relates to integrations. It also, I think all of them have it, but I'm actually more familiar with Firefly than the rest. They do have a mobile app, which is really cool. That's what I alluded to briefly at the beginning when I said in-person meetings. You can, if you wanted to, just bring your phone and hit record, and the AI agent will be there for that in-person meeting. So again, use that if you want, but I know Firefly has that. Probably the other ones do, honestly. So the big thing with Firefly is just integrations. So if you're not using like one of the big CRMs like Salesforce or something like that, using something a little bit more secondary, Fireflies is probably your option to integrate there. And finally, Otter, the third one. I was searching hard for a reason to use it. Honestly, if someone out there knows a good reason to use it, please let me know. I tried using it. I honestly tried opening it up. I had to give up. I had to go over to Firefly. So it was a little bit harder to use. I mean, I feel like I'm a pretty techie guy, but I was hitting some walls. So nothing personal, I guess, to the the Otter team out there, or maybe someone who's using Otter really, really likes it. And I encourage you to keep using it. But just for me and my personal experience, it was tricky to use. So I don't have a huge one. I think, honestly, when I look at their website here, they do look like they want Otter to be like your all-in-one team collaboration tool. So maybe that's more of a use case for it. More, hey, and now I'm not going to even be using Slack or anything like that. I'm actually use Otter, and I'm going to integrate my transcripts right into the conversations I'm having with my team. It's a cool idea, but I think it's pretty niche, and it did make sense for me at least. So in any case, we'll pause there. So hopefully that gives you a good overview of what these tools are, what they do, why you should use it as a mortgage broker, and finally, what are your different options. If anyone out there is using these tools and has a different opinion, I'd love to hear it. Please leave those in the comments. And as always, if you enjoyed this, please like, subscribe, and share just with one colleague. That's how we grow, just one referral at a time. Thanks so much. We'll see you next week.